Next case is VRB 1981.
Tawanda Anthony Land Development. This is application number VRB 1981. The property is located at 5510 Aldana Drive. The applicant is Ivan Galen. The request is as follows. Per section 27-156, the applicant is seeking to reduce the south yard setback from 7 feet to 2.7 feet, the south front yard setback from 20 feet to 3.4 feet, and the north front yard setback from 20 feet to 17.5 feet to allow for the creation of a new lot. The property is zoned RS50 and was purchased in 2012. The existing single-family residence was constructed in 1946. Here's the aerial of the property. It is two lots, and currently it's being used as one zoning lot. Here on the aerial is only depicting the one lot per the lot split. This is a view of the front of the property. This is another view of the front of the property. And you can see the additional lot. Here's a view from the corner. This is the site plan showing lot 28 and the variance requests that are before us today to allow for the lot split. They have two fronts per the lot split, and they're requesting to reduce both front yard setbacks to bring them into compliance, as well as the side yard setback. This is the other lot, so currently it is one zoning lot. But they would be creating a new, this would be the new lot that they would be creating to allow for a single family residence. Any questions for staff?
Mr. Beal?
So the setbacks requested going to 7 to 2.70. So is that going to be subject to each one of those lots, I would assume? Because it can be two lots.
Tawanda Anthony Land Development, it's subject to the lot 28 and the existing structures. All the structures on the second lot will be demolished.
Okay, so it's only for lot 28.
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Nice, home for the night? He's not reporting anymore, do you know?
Yeah,
Well, we do have a tree case, that's right. Okay. All right, will the applicant please come forward?
Good evening. My name is Ivan, and my address is 5510 Aldana Drive, and I'm being sworn.
You have been sworn. Okay, thank you.
Okay. The reason I'm here today is to request permission to split the lots with the purpose of building a single-family home. I have obtained the surveys to display the lot dimensions. As you can see, that the existing house was built in 1946, which is obvious that the setbacks do not meet the current standards that the city requires. That is why I come to you to request the split.
Does that complete your presentation?
Yes.
Okay. Is there anyone else in the audience that wants to speak on this application? Come forward, please state your name, address, and if you've been sworn. Ivan, if you could just move over and so she can speak.
My name is Yarisley Lopez. I live in 5510 Aldana Drive. Actually, I'm the house next to the load. I live in the house next to the load, and I don't have any disagreement with that. I'm
Okay.
agree with that.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Okay, seeing none. Board, do you have any questions for the applicant or staff? Mr. Feldman?
So I have a question for the applicant. First question is, as a consequence of this house existing on the split lot, it's gonna be a little closer to the other lot than would typically be permissible. When you build on the other lot, are you gonna be building a house on the other lot?
Yes, sir.
And you're gonna be taking into account that you have an existing house on this lot, so you're gonna be keeping a good separation from that, is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
Okay, are there any trees on this lot or the other lot that will require removal?
No.
No?
No, sir.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Ms. Long?
What's the hardship? What's the hardship? For us to grant a variance, we have to give you a hardship. What's your hardship?
Well, actually, it's just that the existing house, the only thing that I see that it would have been maybe a problem is that the existing building is too close to the
But only
line
if
to
it-
divide
only-
the device. But this existing house belongs to my wife, to us, to her. It's under her name. And I'm just asking for permission if I can build, because, I mean, if I was to build, if I was to get the permission from you guys, so the new house is gonna, from this neighbor right here, it meets the 7 feet. And the new house is gonna be 7 feet away from the, it's just that the existing house is too close, so that's why I'm asking you guys to allow me.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? The site plan shows, it looks like there's concrete driveway access on both the east and west of the existing carport, is that correct?
It's got, the existing house, it's got on the side,
On the south side, which
it's
is,
got a carport.
which is on Comanche Avenue.
Yes, sir.
There is a carport, and your site plan shows concrete coming in on both sides, is that correct? A driveway on each side.
It's got, the
Staff, could you put a site plan up? It might help them. Zoom in on that a little bit. Okay, it shows a concrete drive coming in across the other lot.
Which
And it looks like, but maybe it doesn't connect, I can't tell. Does it stop at the property line? Or it says asphalt on that one?
Well, this is,
this is the, okay, this is the only carport right here.
Yes, but
That
you
we-
can't drive, can you drive from Comanche into the carport?
From here.
From there, can you drive from there into the carport?
If I open the gate, yeah, I can go. And
Okay, but
it's got asphalt.
Right, okay, so, but when you tear down, we heard staff say the intent would
Yes.
be to tear down, that driveway will not connect
No,
to the other property.
not if the house, I mean, the house that I'm planning to build is gonna be maybe like 1,500 feet, square feet. So I don't think it's gonna, I mean, I'm planning to tear these sheds down, and I don't think it's gonna go the house all the way back there, though.
Okay, I'm not trying to find out exactly what you're gonna build.
Okay.
I'm trying to understand how this carport might be used. So it's your
It's gonna be
testimony.
split.
Your
I'm gonna put a
testimony is
fence. I'm gonna-
just off of Aldana Drive.
Yes.
Okay. And it's currently open on 3 sides. Are you willing to say that it will remain open on all 3 sides and never be enclosed?
Well,
If we were to grant the variance as a condition that you could never enclose that
Okay.
carport,
yeah,
is that something you would be willing to agree
Yeah.
to?
yes, sir.
Okay. Any other, the question was, what are the hardships? You know, that typically means what's unique about the property. What makes the property different than other properties that causes you to need the variance? So that's the simplest way to think about it. You stated it's an existing home.
Yes.
We're not proposing the house get torn down and moved, but, you know, are there other conditions, physical aspects of the property that make it difficult for you to change, other than the cost of things?
No, our plans is just to build this new home so we can move to this new home and then rent this other one. So if we, if,
Okay, all right, that's fine.
That's-
fine. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one for staff, actually. Ms. Anthony, you might be the best one to answer this question rather than the applicant, but you mentioned in your initial presentation that this lot has 2 frontages. Is that correct?
Correct.
And it is, the frontages are on the south side and the north side, correct?
Correct.
And as the house is currently situated, does it meet, without a lot split, does it meet the setbacks for either of those frontages? Or is it not, it's not, are those not the frontages if it's not split, I guess is a
Tawanda
Yeah,
Anthony,
or-
Land Development. So here on Comanche, it appears that it has the 25-foot setback.
better way.
But not
But
the
not with the
carport.
carport.
But not the carport.
Correct, not the carport, but to the structure.
Right.
Okay. Although the carport, does the carport require, does that become main structure setback because it's attached?
Tawanda Anthony, it does, but it just shows that at some point this was probably the front of the property, and that carport may have been added on at a later date.
Okay, but my question, what I'm really trying to get at is the property as it's currently situated doesn't meet those, either of those frontages, right?
Correct.
It doesn't meet the setback for either of those frontages.
So as it
So-
sits right now, he's not in compliance, even if he were not to get the lot split.
Right, and that's what that's essentially what I was trying to get at, and that's why I figured you were probably the better person to ask, because it made more sense. But either way, these setbacks aren't met, and there's no physical changes that are actually requiring the need for this, other than the fact that, well, when the lot gets split, well, now we need to approve these things. Is
Yeah,
that
well,
correct?
no, the lot split is causing the side yard request.
That's a great.
That's what it's
right.
about.
So it's that,
Yeah.
but the frontages they are what they are.
Right.
Correct, but because
Okay.
he's before us today, he's vesting the front,
Okay.
those fronts as
Right.
well.
All right. Well, that sums it up, and that's perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, you have 5 minutes, 5 more minutes if you want to say something else based on what you've heard.
I don't have anything else
You're
to
good?
say.
Okay.
I'm okay.
All right. Then I'm going to move to close the public hearing without objection. Board open for a motion and or discussion.
Well, I can make a motion.
Okay.
If someone else has some discussion. All right. So I'd like to move that the variance request for case VRB 1981 for property located at 5510 Aldana Drive in Tampa, presented at the public hearing to seek relief from section 27-156 to reduce the south side yard setback from 7 feet to 2.7 feet, and the south front yard from 20 feet to 3.4 feet, and the front yard from 20 feet to 17.5 feet to allow the creation of a new lot. And I guess we're going to put in the condition that the existing carport remain unenclosed. That said, the variance as condition be granted upon the applicant presenting competent substantial evidence in the record and that this public hearing of an unnecessary hardship or practical difficulty when considering the 5 hardship criteria set forth in section 2780 of the city code, specifically in this case that the alleged hardships or practical difficulties are somewhat unique and singular with respect to this property. It does have 2 front yards, neither of which meet current codes, primarily because the house was built in 1946. And it was also constructed on a double lot before there was any plan or thought to split the lots. Without the side yard variance, the second lot, in my opinion, would be rendered useless.
All right, we have a motion for approval by Mr. Villa, a second by Mr. Feldman. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Unopposed? Been approved 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next case, VRB 19-82.
Tawanda Anthony Land Development, application VRB 1982. The property is located at 5217 West Cleveland Street. The applicant name is Henry Mosley. Request summary, per section 27290, the applicant is seeking to reduce the west side yard setback from 15 feet to 7.5 feet to construct a 720 square foot accessory dwelling. The property is zoned RS 75 and was purchased in 2018. The existing single-family residence was constructed in 2013. An active building permit was submitted in April of 2019 for an in-ground pool and deck. Here's an aerial of the property. Here's the subject property. Here's West Cleveland Street. Here's a view facing the front. Here's a view facing the corner yard. And here's a view of the rear yard. And here's the site plan. And they're requesting to reduce the side yard setback from 15 feet to 7.5 feet. Are there any questions for staff?
Yeah, the side street, is that a through street?
It is a through street from, I believe this is, I want to say it's Kennedy, but it does dead end here.
It does dead end?
Correct. So this is a dead end, as it comes through and it deads
Yeah,
end.
so
right
it
here.
is not a through street.
Correct.
Maybe, no, fire truck might go there, but not a car. Okay. Any other questions for staff? Okay, applicant. Name, address, if you've been sworn.
Good evening. My name is Henry Mosley. I reside at 6003 South First Street, and I have been sworn in.
Okay.
We're making a request to reduce the side yard setback on this property from 15 feet to 7.5 feet, and we're see if I can get this here. The O'Brien, which is the side street, is closed off. It's got barricades, and it's a very large right-of-way. The city has closed it, but didn't vacate it, and so with the RS 75 zoning, it's still maintaining the 15-foot side setback. And I think at this point, my clients are not really getting the complete access to the side or use of that side setback because it's being closed, and we had wished the city had vacated it, because then our side setback would have been actually 3 feet for the accessory structure that we're trying to build. And so we think that our hardship is simply that we're just not getting the complete access to the side property that we would normally have had. And of course, the setback is now 15 feet instead of 3. Excuse me. So, just want to run through my hardships real quick. One of them I think may have been absent from your packet, which was the 5th one. And so I just want to make sure it was clear. Again, as I said, that we think that the setback should have been at least the 3 feet, but we're maintaining, we think it's a pretty reasonable expectation for us to go 7.5. The accessory dwelling unit could have been pushed to 3 feet in the rear, but we're maintaining another 7.5 feet on that side too. If we designed it and pushed it the additional 7.5 feet further over, it's going to sit right on top of the pool deck. And we just don't think it's in a flood zone. And so we have a finished floor elevation that's going to put the structure very high, and then we're going to have to figure out how to get out of the accessory structure. So again, the part of our hardship is again the height. You're not showing it there, but you can see the steps that come off the front porch. They get right down on top of the deck. I'm not sure if we actually have the correct number of steps there that we're going to need, as it turns out. So just to make sure that it's clear that the O'Brien Street is a 60-foot wide closed right-of-way with a 15-foot landscape buffer and the barricades. It's got lots of room, you know, and I don't think that there's any hardship in us pushing this over. It's the only egress through there right now is for foot traffic. You mentioned fire trucks. It's completely barricaded. Even emergency vehicles can't get through there. So we don't think that we're encroaching on any of the neighbors or, you know, increasing any kind of hardship, you know, in the neighborhood. The rear property is commercial that faces Kennedy, as well as the I guess it's the northwest parcel is also commercial, just multifamily, and there's only one single family property, and that's directly across O'Brien, and then of course across the street. But I don't think that we've got any kind of issues with the neighbors that are to the south of us. The other thing I want to mention is that this accessory dwelling unit is being built specifically for the owner's mother, so she can be close and help raise the family's children. One of the children has autism, and they're really in need of having, you know, the mother on site to help take care of, you know, this child, not just now but in the future. So I think that that pretty much concludes my brief. I think that the owner may want to speak to, you know, her daughter, and if the board wants to, you know, give her an opportunity to come up, we would appreciate that.
She can speak now on your 10 minutes. You still got 5 minutes.
Okay.
So she can tell me.
Sure.
It's her deal.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Lindsay Scarellis, and I live at 5217 West Cleveland Street, and I have been sworn in. My mother is 71 years old. She was a single parent. I have no siblings. She moved from Leesburg, Florida to Newport Richey to be closer to us when I became a mother. At that time, we were living in Odessa. However, due to my daughter's special needs, through collaboration with a special needs attorney, we've decided to move to South Tampa so that my daughter could attend Grady Elementary School. We've done that. As a result, my mother now lives an hour away from us. She helps three days a week, if not more, to care for my other 2 children while I hustle my daughter to and from therapies every day. I am an engineer until my daughter was born, and I have put my career on hold to spend all my time and energy into making her as high functioning as possible, to give her the absolute best opportunity to become an independently functioning adult. However, if that doesn't happen, this accessory dwelling unit will also serve as a potential home for her so that she may maintain some level of independence. We're talking 20 years plus in the future. She's currently 5 years old. Thank you.
Still have a few minutes if you want to wrap up your presentation.
I think that we have, you know, the accessory dwelling units that we build This structure meets the code in every other way, shape, or form. It's a fairly standard building, and typically in the city of Tampa, these setbacks are 3 feet and 3 feet. The R75, and on a corner lot, they push them into the parcel. And this one in particular, we would just, ask the board to give us the additional 7.5 feet so that, we have the room for the stairs because of the flood zone that we're in. And again, we don't think that we've impacted any of the neighbors or created any kind of hardships for anybody else, in this request. There is really nobody else on that side parcel. If I showed you, anyway, I don't really think I've got anything else to say in that regard. I think I've covered it.
Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak on this application? All right, seeing none, board, you got any questions for the applicant or staff? Okay, Mr. Professor.
So I'm trying to figure out the sequencing here. It says on our plan the pool is under construction already?
Yes, it is.
So I
yeah.
assume there's a permit on that?
Yeah, there's a current permit, yeah.
But the accessory has not been permitted?
No, the accessory dwelling unit, we're waiting for the variance to see, where we can put this thing.
Right,
So
so
there
were they
is
not,
no.
were they not contemplated together?
No, they were not. I think the realization that, that mom could be on site and could, help with the children, raising, the assisting in every way she could, just sort of came on to them. Accessory dwelling units, are not the kind of thing that most people think of. It's once you know about them, a light bulb goes off in your head and you go, wow, why didn't I think of that before? Mm-hmm. And especially having mom on the premises. Everybody seems to struggle with how to manage the situation, whether it's an adult child or a disabled parent or anybody, but nobody really thinks about these things. And then once the accessory structure comes into focus as far as a family with these kind of needs, it's a no-brainer now, but it wasn't even on the thought process prior to the swimming pool starting.
Because
Sort of sudden and unexpected.
probably maybe obvious to you, the reason I'm asking is because, if the pool was not already under construction, you could have just shifted the pool and
Maybe so.
not had this.
There is no room on the other side to do this.
It looks
And I agree with you, if we had all the, maybe the owner, if they had known about it prior to, that this was an option for them, may have.
So the pool is already being constructed north-south rather than east-west, which is typical of a pool in a backyard.
Mm-hmm.
That was done intentionally to create additional space in the backyard. It was also intentional. You can see where our back door is. The pool contractor did not recommend shifting the pool any closer to the east, because we have neighbors on that side and our pool deck is already inching closer.
Mm-hmm. But see, my point is, we've got to find hardship with the property, solely with the property, or the reasonable use of the property. And
Well, the hardship is O'Brien Street is not actually a functioning street.
but that's not a hardship. That's an argument that you're making as a benefit to you to be able to do this, but that's not a hardship that's being burdened onto the property. So anyway, my point was, had the pool not been under construction, you could shift it and meet all applicable setbacks and fit all of this and not have it. So that's why I was asking about the sequencing. It doesn't mean that necessarily is something that we can consider now, but I feel like the timing is so close that it almost seems like something that would have at least been contemplated before, to follow up on a new idea, a brand new idea, while something is still being built.
Well, the
and then
hole
ask
was
for
in
a
the ground, the
variance just
concrete
seems-
had already been sprayed, so
Yeah.
at this point, it's now existing.
Yeah, the shell was in.
I get it.
Yeah.
I do.
We understand your point perfectly as well, too. I think that if we had known we were going to think about doing an accessory dwelling unit prior to the shell going in, we had plenty of room. It's just that the circumstances came to us, and O'Brien Street is just a closed road. It's not being used. City is not gonna vacate it, we think, and so we're not ever gonna get the additional reduction that we were hoping for. But we just think that the 7.5 feet would have been a normal side setback, under most circumstances. Under RS-75 zoning, if it had been an interior parcel, this structure would have been 3 feet from the property line. So we understand your position and hoping a little understanding as far as our hardship.
Any other board members have questions? My only question, Mr. Mosley, is
Yes,
you're
sir.
showing a set of stairs leading from the proposed accessory structure directly to the pool deck.
Yes, sir.
Is there any reason why that set of stairs couldn't be moved to the south side of the accessory structure and the entire accessory structure been moved then closer to the pool deck?
Well, there's actually going to be a grill at the very end of the structure on the end of the pool patio, or on the end of that porch, and so we wouldn't be able to come off the end. At least that's the way it's being planned right now.
But if the grill were moved somewhere else, you could do it.
Could do it.
Yeah. Well, these are the questions we have to ask.
I understand.
And you
Yeah,
did
it's just-
testify the neighbor to the north is
It's multifamily.
Is
There's
multifamily.
200 people living there,
But I see pervious pavement. Is
Yes,
that a
sir.
driveway or what is it?
it is, they're trash cans. It's there, you
Is
had
there
a.
a dumpster area?
It's a dumpster and some other stuff there. There's bamboo. It's a, well landscaped area between the two, but it is their utility easement for their trash pickup and stuff like that, so.
Okay.
So we don't, we don't have any issues with trees. We've got nice landscaping down O'Brien. We have the trees that we're showing on our plan, and so we're not impacting any kind of landscaping. And the buffer's large. That's a 12-foot sidewalk and green space to the west of us. So we think that we're hopefully a good fit in there at this point.
And you did testify this is floodplain.
Yes, sir.
So what's the approximate elevation difference?
It's an
between the
AE 10
proposed
zone.
slab? It's
Yeah,
what?
we'll be 4.5, 5 feet above grade.
Is that the current FEMA or the new FEMA?
Well, we'll have to work that out, but it's maybe the new one. We'll have the freeboard and we'll have to meet the new code. So we don't, it's not a lateral addition, it's a new structure in the back. So whatever the new FEMA code is, we'll have to meet
Do you
it.
know what the change is?
My surveyors would have to, but I'm on the flood board for Hillsborough County, so it's,
Okay.
I don't want to guess at what it's gonna be, but
Okay.
the existing house, if you look at it, it's 5 feet or 6 feet above grade. And so staircases getting out of the building and making them flow, it's gonna be a problem for us to make it work. We're not showing all the details because it's sort of a preliminary design at this point. We're trying to work our way into the setbacks, and then we'll finish the transition out of the building.
Okay.
It's a 2-foot difference.
A 2
2
foot
foot. It's from 9
between
feet
current
to-
and future?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
8
sir.
and 9.
Wait,
Okay.
8 to 9 is
9,
1 foot.
9 to 11.
9 to 11?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Any other questions?
Do you want to say that they're missing an opportunity to have a high dive?
Yeah.
directly
No,
Yeah,
I
we-
wasn't gonna
into the
design it
Yeah.
for them.
That's such a cool opportunity.
Yeah.
No, we're not gonna do that.
Kids will be kids, right? Can't take it out of you.
All right, we don't have any other questions, so you have 5 minutes for rebuttal.
Okay, I don't have anything else to add at this
Okay,
point.
all
Thank you.
right. Then I'll close the public hearing without objection and ask the board for a motion and/or discussion.
So, look, we see occasionally instances where we see self-created hardships when we've got a pool that's built, and then everybody goes, "Oh no, I suddenly realized I need a pool cage or I need a pool house." We see those. This doesn't seem like that type of situation. I get that we could read that into it, but I think that even if that were the case, I think it's mitigated by this road issue and the fact that the cutting into this setback, which perhaps is an unnecessary setback to begin with, doesn't seem like it's a tremendous problem. And I do see that the existence of this road, the vacated road in and of itself, creating this 15-foot setback does seem like a hardship to me, so I can support it.
Any other comments? I'll just say that I can support this too for those same reasons. The only caveat that I would have, or reservation I should say, is that there is some room in this site plan between the pool deck proposed, because I don't think it's finished yet, so I guess it's proposed, and the actual proposed accessory structure. But they do have the egress issue of the floodplain. It's going to require 8 or 9 steps, it sounds like. So I don't even know if they have enough room to do what they're showing, depending on the elevation of the pool deck. That could be a foot out of the ground. I think the code does allow you to come a foot up. There's shells in the ground, so we don't know what they did. But anyway, because of the vacated road primarily, and the use of the multifamily behind it, trash can use, I wouldn't have any heartburn on this. So, make a motion?
Well, let's.
I just want to say, you're right, we can't consider intent or things of that nature, and I'm not doing that.
Okay.
But I do think that there's plenty of room to meet the setback and still get that structure with all the rooms that it has in it, so.
With a twisty slide going down, or the high. Or stairs out of the side. Yeah, you are.
Or stairs on
You're
the
absolutely
side. All right, so we want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion as it stands, and we'll just see how it rolls. I move that the variance request for case VRB 19-82 for property located at 5217 West Cleveland be granted as depicted on site plan presented at the public hearing, to reduce the west side yard setback from 15 feet to 7.5 feet, with the encroachment of eaves and gutters, based upon the applicant presenting competent and substantial evidence in the record and at this public hearing of an unnecessary hardship or practical difficulty when considering the 5 hardship criteria set forth in section 2780 of the city code, specifically that the closed street on the west side, O'Brien Street, has been closed but not vacated by the city, is barricaded off and is all but vacated, and the homeowner is not getting complete access to that side because of that street not being vacated, and that requires a 15-foot setback instead of what would be a standard 3-foot setback were the road vacated and not just closed. And that the rear property is commercial or multifamily, and there are no impacted neighbors as a consequence of this variance.
All right, we have the motion for approval of Mr. Feldman, a second by Ms. Long. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? You've been approved 4-1.
Thank you.
All right, next case, VRB 19-83.
Wanda Anthony Land Development, this is case VRB 1983. The property is located at 2707 West Thornton Avenue. The applicant is Gina Gargia. The summary request is as follows. Per section 27-156 and 27-290, the applicant is seeking to reduce the front yard setback from 60 feet to 30 feet, the building separation from 5 feet to 0 feet, and reduce the front yard setback from 25 feet to 16.7 feet to vest existing shed and single-family residence. The property is zoned RS50 and was purchased in 2004. The existing single-family residence was constructed in 1910. The property is currently under violation for the accessory structure. There's an aerial of the property, West Thornton Avenue, and here's the subject parcel. Here's a view facing the front. Here's a view facing west, and you can also see the shed that's under violation. Here's a view facing east. And here's the site plan of the parcel. And here's the shed. And they're also asking for the reduction of the front yard to vest the existing structure. Any questions for staff?
Do you laid out a lot of dates. Do you know when the shed was constructed?
Swan Down to Land Development, I do not.
We'll ask them.
It is like a prefabricated shed, so I'm not sure when it was installed.
Okay, applicant, state your name, address, and if you've been sworn.
Good evening, I'm Michael Lauder, 2707 West Thornton. I have been sworn. I'm agent for the applicant, Gina Gadrage, my wife. I'd like to thank the board for allowing us to speak this evening, and especially thank my wife for allowing me to speak for her, which doesn't happen every day. As you can see, as Ms. Anthony pointed out, our request is to reduce the front yard setback to the existing structure to 16.7 feet and to reduce the setback for the shed to 30 feet and to 0 feet as an accessory structure next to the primary. Our hardship on the property is that this property was originally platted under the 80% rule. City of Tampa creating a fairly small lot, 75 feet deep. This house was actually relocated from Port Tampa, best we can tell, sometime in the 20s. The property owners remained owning a good bit of land in that area and sold off different parcels until 87, when they sold this particular one. Changed hands a couple times till we bought it in 2004. Best we can tell, to answer the board's question, the shed, we understand, was built 4 years before we bought the property. It was not prefab. It was constructed on site, best we can tell, of materials. It's a frame structure. And effectively, it's been in existence since we've owned the property and has not changed its location. The code enforcement noted the setback issues and requested that we relocate or remove. The removal, although possible, would take away our only exterior storage for garden implements, things of this nature, which we feel would, create a bit of a hazard in the yard, but it would also impact how the property might look from the street. You saw the pictures that the shed actually sits behind a 6-foot fence and has been painted to mirror the colors of the house so that it blends in. There's also landscaping as a further buffer. And on the plan here, I've shown our landscape plan. You can note that we have 2 trees, one within our property boundary and one outside. In the northeast corner, we have a grandfather oak, the perimeter of which you can, a grand oak, the perimeter of which you can see depicted on the drawing, almost a third of our lot. And then another that is not correctly cited in my drawing, I apologize for that. It's actually much closer to the property boundary and has a similar circumference overlooking our property. In terms of the ability to relocate, which is what code enforcement suggested, we're running into the 20-foot buffer for those oak trees in both sides of the lot. The attached deck that sits at the back of the property goes to within 3 feet of the fence, so it is the proper setback. The stairs have now been renovated by us from this 2004 survey. The stairs actually run the entire width of the porch, and so effectively we have nowhere else in the yard to relocate this particular shed. So we're requesting the variance to allow it to remain as is in the current location, and we're hoping the board finds in our favor. I have pictures that I can show if you have any questions.
Would you like to submit those? You have time if you want to show them to us.
Sure, if you care to. You've seen the depiction from the front to give a sense of scale for the oak tree in the back. That's looking from this view from the front of the property back toward the tree. You can see we've got landscape and hardscape throughout this area. This will give you a sense of the scope at the base of the trunk. And another view looking eastward toward the neighbor. This gives a look westward toward the deck. So you can see that we've got a bit of a problem here, or a challenge, I should say. That's the property pathway and the setback from the fence. And you can see that that goes the whole way. This is the northwest oak sitting just past the corner of the property, and it kind of incurs on this entire thing. And then this is the back of the shed in its current location. The distance between the current shed and the back fence, this is an olive tree that's probably 6 to 7 inches in diameter and part of our hardscape. So gives you a sense of where the property is and the challenges that we see as hardship that would preclude us from removing or relocating as code has suggested.
Does that complete your presentation?
It does. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this application? Come forward, please state your name, address, and if you've been sworn.
My name is Stephen Schumacher. I live at 2711 West Thornton Avenue, and I have been sworn in. And I would fully endorse this variance that they've requested. I live in a similar-sized property and home. My house was built in 89 and 90. I have the benefit of having a single family or a single car garage. They do not, and so certainly they need a place to put their stuff. I couldn't imagine having living that without having a facility for it. And truly, we appreciate the canopy in our neighborhood and wanting to see those trees protected. The shed is not at all considered an eyesore. The neighbors don't complain about it, nor do I. And certainly with all of the growth that's taking place on our street and in our neighborhood. So I certainly would ask the board to approve this. And thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak on this application? Okay, seeing none, board, questions for the applicant or staff? I have a question on this. Could you put the site plan up?
It is, sir.
Yeah, excuse me. Okay. I'm looking at mine, not yours. What's the distance? It says 3 feet. But you had a photograph of that area between the two buildings.
Yes.
Can you put that back up?
I may have a duplicate. Hold on, please.
There was one. back
Yeah,
to
I
the
actually
shed.
have one that, okay, let me see if I
Hand
can
them
find
in.
it.
Maybe we could hand that one back.
No, I do think I have a duplicate. Bear with me 2 seconds. So the vertical line as depicted on the survey is the structural wall. That's the 3-foot distance depicted on the survey here. That distance there is that distance. And it's the roof overhang that is incurring, I think the current regs are a 5-foot setback from the principal structure. So we're seeking 0 because as you can tell from this picture, the roof overhang, that eave, and that roof, although there's a great distance between top and bottom, from a strict vertical line, it's basically a 0. If the board found that 0 was too much, obviously the possibility exists to reduce the roof eave on the shed, but that is kind of going a long way for a small structure.
And what is the foundation of the shed?
The foundation, as best we can, I've never been under there, to be candid. We've owned the property for a long time. I've never really looked at it. We believe it's anchored. I don't know if it's anchored to footers or if it's anchored into porch piers, if you will. I've never had occasion to really get under there.
Is the floor concrete or wood?
Wood,
Like plywood?
yes.
Okay. So it probably is on a crawl space.
If it is, the crawl space is minimal. I mean, it's basically,
You don't step up into
pretty,
it?
I do. I mean, it's about a 1.5, 2 foot step up.
Oh,
It's
so you
nothing.
do step up to it?
I do,
Okay.
yes.
And it was a prefabricated shed?
Best we can tell, it's been constructed. Now, whether it was prefab in 2000 when it was built, I don't know, but the structural elements are you know, 2x4 and
Okay.
roof rafters
Is
and shingles.
it sided or stuccoed or?
We've actually re-sided it with mason board, basically, to just make it a little bit, the original was a thin bead board, and it was falling apart. So we pulled that off and put a more structurally sound element on there recently.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, can you repeat once again the rationale about not moving the shed just straight back into the corner?
Back into,
Yeah, so that would be the northwest corner.
to this northwest corner?
Yeah,
Rationale is 3 reasons. In between the shed and that location is an existing olive tree that is a structural landscape, or it's a landscape element that would have to be completely removed. The problem that we have when you get to the steps, the dimension from existing house to property line is 14.9 feet as depicted here. That dimension is carried back there. The steps are 3 feet. That makes this about 11.9 from the edge of the step to the fence. We need 3 feet from the fence. That gives us 8.9. The shed is 8 by 8. That gives me 9 inches to open the door, step off the steps, or try to navigate around that structure. So that becomes a bit of a hardship for us there. And in that particular corner, we're going to be running into the oak tree roots for the neighbors' grand. And, you know, that's obviously something that Mr. Knox came out and visited and so forth.
thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Okay, you have 5 minutes for rebuttal, based on the questions and answers.
I don't know if I heard any that actually challenged our variance, did I? Is it just the one question about why we can't locate it to that northwest corner?
Well, you heard what you heard, so I think that, again, we have to make a decision based on hardship, and that falls back on the uniqueness of the property.
Sure.
And the things that are on the property. You did a good job, I thought, with your photographs of showing us what's in the backyard.
Sure.
So I think there's a physical understanding of that.
Okay. The neighborhood itself, as you know, Ballast Point has many of these same features. It has older homes, it has smaller lots, it has grand oaks. Not all of them have all of those things in the particular property. We do. This particular shed, although it may be constructed as it is now, we really have no way to move it absent getting rid of the fence and pulling it out. We have to either take out an olive tree to relocate it. We would want to probably, if we're going to have it in a more exposed location in the yard, we may seek to anchor that thing into an area that would compromise the oak tree roots. We don't want to cause any damage to a neighbor's tree that might also impinge on us. Given a small lot, these trees basically are looming over our home. So the hardship to us is an existing structure that's been there for the entirety of our ownership that doesn't cause any kind of a nuisance in the neighborhood, that serves a distinct purpose and would be a challenge for us to relocate, represents a hardship that we would hope you'd find in our favor.
Okay, does that conclude your presentation?
It does.
Rebuttal?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll close the public hearing without objection. Board, discussion or motion?
Depicted on the site plan, presented at the public hearing for a reduction in the front yard setback from 60 feet to 30 feet, reduction in the building separation from 5 feet to 0 for accessory structure, and reduce the front yard setback from 25 to 16.7, section 27-156 and 27-290. With encroachment, with an encroachment for eaves and gutters. Based upon the applicant presenting competent and substantial evidence in the record and at this public hearing of an unnecessary hardship or practical difficulty when considering the 5 hardship criteria set forth in section 2780 of the city code, specifically that the lot is small, the shed and the main property were built long before the current owner purchased it. There is no other location on the property to place the accessory structure, And if it were to be totally removed, it would be a major project just due to the size of the lot relative to the size of the building on it.
Can I seek a point of clarification on this?
Yes.
I'm confused about the two front yard reductions that are listed on our agenda and on the application. I support the motion, but I just want to make sure that we're accurately, that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing on this, because we're reducing the front yard from 60 to 30, and we're also reducing the front yard from 25 to 16.7. So without opening the public hearing, if I can look to legal for that, and if legal needs us to clarify it, we will.
It was my understanding that the 25 to 16.7 was for the primary, and then the 16 to 30 was for the shed.
Okay,
All right.
that's
So
it.
if you can just state that in your motion,
Okay.
I think that would clear that up.
Make an amendment that reduce the front yard setback from 60 to 30 for the primary structure.
Nope.
No.
I've
For
got
the
it
accessory
backwards.
structure.
For the accessory structure, the building separation from 5 to 0 for the accessory structure, and reduce the front yard setback from 25 to 16.7 for the primary structure.
I will second that.
Okay, that's good. Thank you for catching that.
All right, so we have a motion for approval by Ms. Long, a second by Mr. Feldman. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? You've been approved 5-0.
Thank you.
Next case is VRB 1984. A so-so year.
Thank you, Mr. Knox. Thank you.
Tawanda Anthony Land Development, this is application VRB 1984. The property address is 1516 West North B Street. The applicant is Kelly Lona. Per section 27-156, the applicant is seeking to reduce the side yard setback from 7 feet to 3 feet to construct a new single-family residence. The property is zoned RS50 and was purchased in 2019. The existing single-family residence was constructed in 1914. The property received a tree consultation in April of 2019. Here's the aerial of the property. Here's the subject property. Here's West North B Street. And you can see it surrounded. You have residential. You also have some IG. There's some PD developments in the area. So it's a very mixed-use area. And here's a view of the property. And you can see that to the east that there's an existing new development, single-family residence there. And then this is mixed-use development here. And here's a site plan of the request. And you can see that the applicant is requesting to reduce the side yard setbacks to 3 feet. Are there any questions for staff?
Mr. Feldman, you have a question?
Yeah, just so that I'm not as adept as some of my colleagues in reading some of these site plans. What are the lot dimensions for this lot? 25 by 98? Okay, that's what I wanted to think.
And you said this is RS50?
Correct.
Okay. And wait, was it a platted lot of record, or is it meets and bounds, or what?
Tawanda Anthony Land Development, it appears that this is a lot of record.
Okay, all right, thank you. Applicant, name, address, serial number, have you been sworn?
My name is Kellyona, and I currently live at 10709 Lake Carroll Way, Tampa, Florida. This is my, I do own this lot, but it is currently uninhabitable, so I don't live at this lot currently. But if you thought the other lots were small, I promise you mine is the smallest. So I'm here today, and I do actually have my site plan, and this one does include the location of some trees that are on the lot. The reason I'm here today is to reduce the side setbacks from 7 to 3 feet. The current structure that sits on the lot, which you can see is here, it would start here, is about 20 feet. My request is just to build a new structure that would be almost the same width, which actually would be 1 foot less, which would be 19 feet. My hardship, I believe, is pretty clear. If I do not get this variance granted, I can only build an 11-foot wide home. And I do want to build a block home, which would then probably limit me to about 9.5 feet of living space, which would not only make it a practical hardship for me in terms of living inside of it, but also in terms of construction and just configuration. And then also it probably affects my potential of ever being able to resell the home in the future, as well as I believe it wouldn't be in line with the other homes on the street. And I don't know if, that my neighbors would be happy with a hallway size home next door to them. Now, there are some protected trees within, well, there's one in my backyard, which is within 10 feet of my lot. I did have a tree report done, and I was given permission that I could remove that tree, and I will be removing that because in order to comply with the 20-foot setback in the front, I would need to move that current structure. The new structure would need to be moved back 18 feet. The other protected tree is right here on my neighbor's lot, and that's currently, you can see my boundary line is here, but his fence, it goes about 5 feet out. So this is where the trunk is. Now the current structure sits right here and the limbs go over my house. But since I'm moving the home back 18 feet, I should be able to just trim those limbs, and it shouldn't affect the health of the tree. But as a precaution, I did speak with the city, and they did require that I obtain permission from my neighbor, that he would give me permission to remove the tree if necessary, and that is included in your packet. He did provide me that affidavit that gives me permission to remove that tree if it's needed, as well as I don't know if I'm allowed to say, but I did speak with my neighbor on the right, the commercial. He has no issues with this variance, and also my neighbor on the left-hand side, I've spoken with him personally. He wished me luck tonight. He has no issues with the granting of this variance. As you can see the picture of the home is probably one of the most derelict structures on the street. It's kind of actually falling to the side. It's falling apart. If you went out to the site, it's completely falling apart. There's basically no way for me to really rehabilitate this home without completely tearing it down with what the current structure is like. So that's the basis for my request. Again, I believe that I have a very unique hardship in this case. Most of the lots on my street and on the neighboring street are double the size. They don't have this hardship. And it also seems, and I don't know this for sure, but it seems that a lot of the new developments, they obtained variances. I don't know if they're similar to the one that I'm requesting, but it just from the width and the distance from their boundary line, it seems that they may have obtained variances. And again, I think it would not only make it easier for me to build and construct, it would benefit all the neighbors in the area, to improve their lot value, just because it'll be a brand new home instead of this structure next door to it. And also just for practical purposes, the current home is not level. So when it rains, it creates a moat around my property, which then causes the rainfall to run onto my neighbor's property. And that's something that they really want fixed, and they're excited about having fixed when I am hopefully able to build a new home.
Okay, does that complete your presentation?
Yes, it does.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this application? Seeing none, board, do you have any questions for applicant or staff?
I just was gonna say, half a lot, half a house, half a setback makes sense. I just wish you would have brought some floor plans so we could see how you're fitting it all in there.
I,
You don't need
honestly,
'em.
if I'm
You
being
don't need
100,
'em. I just wish you
Okay.
could see them.
That's the
Okay.
architect in him coming out, he can't help it.
okay, just curiosity.
I've got a question for zoning. And it doesn't, well, it does matter in this case. Why is there a 40-foot front yard setback on this property? Is that, am I not, the site plan shows a 40-foot dimension, is that the center line? That's center line, okay. So does that leave us with something uniquely different? I mean, that's an 80-foot right-of-way. What are most residential right-of-way, street right-of-ways? 50, 60 feet?
It's 50 feet.
Do you know?
Tawanda Anthony Land Development, I'm not sure.
It's considered
Um,
large.
I mean, it looks large.
60. I think
Yeah.
it's 60 because if it's the 40 with the 20, it would be 60 feet. And it seems that my neighbor to the left that is a new development is about at that location. I'm not sure what
Well,
the
they
reasoning.
would have had, I'm assuming, maybe a
I
similar
mean, this is the West
setback.
Tampa Overlay District, and that's why the lots are small, but it is a, you know, if it was, it's a legal lot of record just because that's the way it was initially platted. And if it was that way as of 2000, then it makes it a legal lot of record also.
Well, let me re-ask the question. Is this a rather large right-of-way for a residential street?
It is, but it is a mixed-use street, meaning there's residential and there's also non-residential
So a
uses
lot
there
because
as
of
well.
the potential commercial development?
Correct.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any other questions? All right, you have 5 minutes.
I think I said everything I need to say, and I hope you'll find it in my favor.
All right, I'll close the public hearing without objection and move for a board motion and or discussion.
Make a motion.
Lays away.
Move that variance request for case VRB 1984 for the property located at 1516 West North B Street be granted as depicted on the site plan presented at the public hearing for a reduction in side yard setbacks from 7 feet to 3 feet with encroachment of eaves and gutters based upon the applicant presenting competent substantial evidence in the record at this public hearing of an unnecessary hardship or practical difficulty when considering the 5 hardship criteria set forth in section 2780 of the city code, specifically that this lot is approximately half the size of a normal RS-50 lot, and that in order to build a house of reasonable occupiable size, they need to reduce the setbacks commensurate with the reduction in the size of the lot itself.
I'll second it. And I'll also make a note that that's Mr. Pastor's birth year, so he's excited about this.
Only happens every 100 years.
Like I said, it's a so-so year. All right, we have a motion for approval by Mr. Pastor, a second by Mr. Feldman. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? You were approved 5-0.
Thank you.
Next case, VRB 1985, a much better year.
Tawanda Anthony Land Development, this is application number VRB 1985. The property is located at 2623 West Jatan Avenue. The applicant is David Clay and Catherine Witherspoon. The summary is as follows. Per section 27290, the applicant is seeking to reduce the front yard setback from 60 feet to 50 feet and the side yard setback from 3 feet to 1 foot to allow for an 82 square foot accessory structure. The property is owned RS60 and was purchased in 2009. The existing single-family residence was constructed in 1939. And the aerial of the property, West Jatan Avenue, and here's the subject property. There's a view facing the front of the property. Here's another view facing the front. And here's a view facing the east side yard. Here's the site plan. And this is, let's see if we can zoom in. And this area, the dark area is where they're requesting to build the accessory structure. This is the scope of work here. Any questions for staff?
See none. Applicant?
Yes.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Variance Review Board and council. My name is John Grandoff. My address is 3700 Bank of America Plaza. This evening, I have the pleasure of representing Clay and Catherine Witherspoon. Clay's with me this evening to my left. In summary, the home was built in 1939 without a pool, without a garage. It's a little bit late. And they have elected to build an accessory structure to put their children's things and other storage items in the home, approximately, 82 square feet. The code requires a 60-foot setback from the front. They're asking for a variance to 50 feet. And also from the side lot line, instead of 3 feet, 1 foot. And Tawanda showed you the site plan. It's just this section right here. And this will illustrate it a little bit better. You can see it's just this area right here. Here's the 1 foot. And instead of pushing it back 60 feet, we thought it'd be better and more conducive with the neighborhood to line it up with this wall, which would require the 10-foot setback. That's why we're here this evening. The neighbor immediately to the east, Mr. Anton, has signed a letter in support of the application. He's the most affected. He's immediately to the east. There's his letter. The neighbor to the west is also in support. A neighbor across the street, 2 neighbors across the street are also in support. I've received no telephone calls in objection to the application. I'll also mention to you, in 1939 there was no zoning code, so this was an existing home. And then the zoning code came into effect. We're asking for relief from the current code to build the accessory structure. I think the most significant part is it will line up with the current elevation right here. I have nothing further to add. I respectfully request your approval this evening. I submit that we show a uniqueness with the property and it meets the hardship criteria.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this application? Okay, seeing none, board, do you have any questions for the applicant or staff?
Are you gonna have a gutter on the side that dumps on the neighbor?
Pardon me?
Gutter? You gonna have a gutter?
I don't believe so. Do we have a gutter or those neighbors?
Will you have a gutter?
Let me ask Clay. Yes, we will.
Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Just for clarification, Mr. Randolph, the area that's behind this, that's colored, is it already constructed or is it being constructed?
That's already constructed. Clay, you want to explain what's there back there?
Sure.
Yeah, state your name, address,
Sure.
and if you've been.
David Clay, Witherspoon, 2623 West Jeton, and I have been sworn in.
Wow.
Yes, this was permitted. The pergola and patio area was permitted and constructed in, I believe, 2018. So, yeah.
Okay, so this area is just vacant paved area? Or grass?
No, currently it's got a brick area for the garbage cans, and then also just mulch.
Okay, and the 5-foot distance between the proposed structure and the house, you're obviously respecting the required 5-foot eve to use separation?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
And site plan went away, but,
There you go. There's a good, there, looking straight back. So it will line up with this wall here.
That's correct.
And you'll have, the passageway will be here, it'll be about right here.
Correct.
okay, and where, in rough proximity, is the rear corner of your neighbor's house in relation to that wall that it's gonna line up with?
The front wall, actually, I believe the back of the structure, call it the end of the north, will line up with the back of his house.
Okay. And he was one of the folks that said in writing he was okay with it?
Correct, yes, David Anton, yes.
Mr. Anton.
And you can't move it forward towards the street because?
Well, we would then be asking for a variance closer to the
Well,
street.
greater variance, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But they might also allow you to move it away from the side yard. If you moved it far enough forward.
You mean if we brought it forward?
Yeah,
Well, I think
Well,
then
it's-
it would be out of scale, I think, with the,
Yeah.
with this wall.
And then where our driveway is too wide, as well, which is a plus in our neighborhood.
so that area is currently used as a parking pad, is that?
Correct.
What it's used as?
Correct.
When you said driveway, but it's a parking pad?
Correct.
Okay. Those are my questions. Anybody else got anything? Okay, you have 5 minutes. For rebuttal.
I have nothing further to add.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll close the public hearing without objection. Board, motion and/or discussion.
I move that a variance request for case VRB 19-85, notice of the year, for property located at 2623 West Jutan Avenue be granted as depicted on the site plan presented at the public hearing, to reduce the front yard setback from 60 feet to 50 feet and the side yard setback from 3 feet to 1 feet, to allow for the construction of an 82 square foot accessory structure with an encroachment of eaves and gutters based upon the applicant presenting competent substantial evidence in the record and at this public hearing of an unnecessary hardship or practical difficulty when considering the 5 hardship criteria set forth in section 27-8 of the city code, specifically that the home was built in 1939, that the placement of the existing structures leaves no place for any kind of outdoor storage, and that this structure will provide storage and/or parking, and its placement lines up with the existing wall of the existing structure, and that the neighbors all support the construction.
All right, we have a motion for approval by Mr. Feldman, a second by Mr. Pasteur. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? You've been approved 5-0.
Thank you for your time this evening. Thank you.
Last but not least, VRB 1986.
Tawanda Anthony Land Development, this is case VRB 1986. The property is located at 5117 West Neptune Way. The applicant is Richard and Anna Cox. The summary is as follows. For section 27284.2.5, the applicant is seeking the removal of a 42-inch live oak. The applicant is seeking to remove the grand tree to construct a single-family residence. The property is zoned R75 and was purchased in 2015. The existing single-family residence was constructed in 1949. Natural Resources has reviewed this and has comments, and they will provide their comments following my presentation. And here's an aerial of the site. West Neptune, and here's the subject property. Here's a view of the front of the property. It's highly vegetated. Here's another view of the front of the property. And this is a picture of the grand tree. This is the site plan. This is the tree, this is the 20-foot protective radius, and this is the canopy. This is an alternative design. And this is another alternative design. And natural resources will now come up.
Brian Knox, Natural Resources. So, as stated, currently there's a single-family residence that's on the property. It's a one-story, and the grand tree is located in the rear of that property. Initially, when I looked at it, I thought that there was a set of plans in there, and I thought that this was an attempt to design around the tree. It shows it as 36 inches, but it's actually 41 or 42 inches. And we thought this was the attempt to design around this tree, and so I started to go through the process of trying to see if we could get a one-story that looks like this underneath the tree. The tree has a very pronounced canopy. Some parts of it is very low, somewhere between 8 to 12 feet, and some of the limbs are very long as well. So it encompasses a good bit of the property. So once I did a field visit, and when I did the field visit, I met with the arborist of record, Ricky Pederica, and when we were on site, he informed me that the plans that were intended to be built look more like this. And so this is one of the iterations of the proposed building layout. This is for a two-story building, and according to that, there basically is nowhere to develop in terms of preserving the grand tree and building a two-story residence. And so knowing that, I just put together my report and stated that, the size of the tree, the rating and condition, it's B7. I also was informed that while we were out in the field that the elevation, the finished floor elevation would be raised, so that kind of puts this tree in even more dire straits than it is with the two-story development. And so to keep the tree, the applicant would have to essentially develop a one-story single-family residence, and even under that, I had some challenges trying to navigate that in terms of building layout. So the applicant will probably provide more information on what they're proposing to build, and also a further canopy analysis of the tree. If the board approves this variance, the replacements will be based on the canopy spread as that is required per the new code. I'm available if there's questions. I do have some pictures. I'll just run through those real quick. This is the tree. The grand tree is in the rear of this property, so this is actually facing the grand tree. That's from the front of the property. This is the back of the property. There's no way to get a real good shot of the tree, but just to give you some of the large scaffold limbs that are on this tree and how far they reach, I just tried to take as many photos as I could to relay that point. some of the limbs. This is one of the lower hanging limbs on the live oak. This one is pretty low, and this is one that would, even under a single family residence, it would have to be removed. It's possible, but it's in terms of canopy percentage of removal, we're not sure of what that would be for this one. But limbs like this and other limbs would have to be removed. We were looking at this limb, I think it was, it ranged from the one side of the property and the limb extended to the other side. So this tree is it's a pretty large tree for the size property it's on. And that's my last photo, and that concludes my presentation. Any questions?
I see none. Applicant?
Good evening. My name is Morris Massey, 101 East Kennedy Boulevard, Suite 3700 here in Tampa on behalf of Richard and Anna Cox relative to the variance for the grand tree removal at 5117 West Neptune Way. I do have some material I'd like to hand out to the board. Here, I have this one. And I have with me Ricky Federica, who is our arborist. Real quickly, and I'll let Ricky go through the analysis of both our site plan options and the impact on the grand tree and any potential to reconfigure, which we really don't believe there is in this circumstance. But under tab 1, I think there's some confusion relative to this drawing, which Brian discussed. This was part of the initial submittal. I think we're all trying to catch up with the new criteria in the code. And so there was a response, and you'll see under tab 1, discussing the reasonable reconfiguration criteria that's now in the code. And this drawing was attached to show really what the buildable area would be if you respected all the setbacks in the 20-foot radius around the tree. And you have an RS-75 zone piece of property with about an 80-foot wide lot. And you're talking about perhaps trying to fit, if you can, and again, there's some question whether you can, even if it's one story, a house that would be about 33 or 34 feet in width maximum, which is not reasonable for a property that's zoned this RS-75 with this width and in this neighborhood. And it's not functional. It would not allow for reasonable internal flow. And you can also see in the narrative request that it was clear that we were proposing a two-story home. So the site plan alternatives that were shown by Ms. Anthony and Brian are the site plan alternatives. Under tab 2 is the survey that shows the general location of the tree. It's about 20 feet south of the north property line, but it's really mid-lot. And so with its limb structure, it really impacts the entire lot. Again, Brian's going to go through, Ricky's going to go through his analysis showing its impact on the tree, our proposed site plan, how that will impact the tree, and whether there's any potential to reasonably reconfigure, which, again, we don't believe there is. I did want to point out under tab 5 is an aerial, and this is similar to the aerial that Tawanda showed you all of the property, depicting really the general development in the area. And I'll put this up here too. And I have behind it some photographs of houses on the block. In the adjacent block, you can see that virtually this whole area is all zoned RS-75. And the homes are large executive homes. And virtually all are relatively new construction, 2 stories. That is the development pattern in this neighborhood. You can contrast that with the information I've provided under tab 6, which again shows the house that was built in 1949, 1 story, very low. We cannot build that today. We are going, for the FEMA regulations, going to have to, any redevelopment of this property is going to require that we're going to have to substantially fill the property, which will have an impact on the tree as well, and raise the height of any building home that we build on the property. You can also see in the property appraisal information that we provided that the property appraiser valued this house at less than $100,000, but the overall value of the property is over $800,000. And that's based on its RS-75 zoning, its location in Beach Park along a waterfront canal, and the similar nature of development nearby. And we do have some letters of support under tab 7 of neighbors as well. And with that, I'm going to let Ricky present and give his analysis, and I'm going to hand out his CV, another site plan analysis he did after I submitted it, prepared our packet, and his mitigation calculations. So take it away, Ricky.
You got 3 minutes.
Evening forward.
But I'll give you more if you want.
I'll see what I can do. I know it's late. Ricky Petarica, 400 North Tampa Street, Suite 1040. I have been sworn. I'd just like to introduce you to the tree and to my diagram. This is as Ms. Anthony said, this is the center of the tree. The outer line is the 20 feet, and then the green line is the canopy as field determined. This is the tree, and on the exhibit I had before, let me quickly go back, I'm showing some of the limbs that are the lower scaffold limbs and providing dimensions on where they are. So 8 feet for this limb where it connects to the trunk, 12 feet for this limb where it connects to the trunk, and that you can start seeing here. So this is the limb that goes to the east. This is one of the long limb that goes to the south. So it has these 2 limbs already start to, are already overhanging or just near overhanging the existing single-story structure. If you look at the survey provided in the packet, you'll see that the existing grade 6, the FEMA flood elevation is currently 9, which puts the finished floor of any proposed structure at 10, and it's going to 11. So that's a consideration in all these, in these diagrams, that what was provided, in this case, this is the initial assessment, the tree is in the house. That's that which adversely impacts the tree. When I adjust the position of the house to the allowable design exception setbacks, which is one of the criteria, the house remains, or the tree remains in the house. When I was provided a reduced footprint and shifted it to the design exception criteria, we avoid the trunk, but now the 2-story section is still impacting those limbs. So there would be a house approximately here and here, which would adversely impact just the structure of the tree, not to mention the critical root zone at the base. A second example of this is if we started to less out some of these areas in order to provide for the structure of the limbs, bedrooms are lost and closets are gone and access to other bedrooms are lost, and it adversely, or it appears unreasonable in the reconfiguration of the floor plan to accommodate this otherwise sprawling and good tree. And finally, just to support natural resources, this is a flow of the mitigation that would be required based on the canopy spread of the tree. So using the calculations from the field measurements and following the same condition rating and species rating, which is defined at the state level by an organization, we follow through, so there'll be 30 2.5-inch trees required with the proposed removal. I'm here for any questions.
What would the tree replacement have been under the old code?
42 inches.
So 21 2-inch trees.
21 2-inch trees. So now.
That now to what?
Now it's 70 inches aggregate.
Well, no, it's 2.5. So it was 31.
Yes, so 60 to 70, depending on how what shakes out with the container size.
Right, so it's gone up a good 50%.
By the nature of being very, very wide and in good condition.
Okay, and your 3D photos there, I mean, the aerials look like it's a very healthy, robust tree in the top, but the photo, yeah, if you could look up, it almost looked like the center was empty.
There's probably some washing out that's influencing that. It is a nice tree, and this is a nice space. It's definitely creating an interesting environment. So I wouldn't diminish it by the canopy compared to some other trees I regularly see. I think that's just more sunlight.
Okay, I interrupted your presentation, but you're at the end of your.
Yes,
13
yes.
minutes, so I've got to cut you off. Is
Okay.
there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this application? All right, seeing none. Board, do you have any questions? You got 5 minutes.
I have nothing.
I have nothing either, unless you all have questions.
Okay, I'll close the public hearing and without objection and ask the board for discussion and or motion.
Oh, this tree is its own worst enemy. It's such a great, beautiful tree, and its spread is so incredible that it essentially makes anything on this lot unbuildable. I mean, it's a shame. I mean, the tree should, if in a perfect world, the tree should get to have this lot. It should get to stay there and nothing should be built. But that's not fair, and that's not the point of a reasonable use analysis.
Well, unless the reasonable use becomes a city park.
Right, and unless I don't hear the city offering to buy it.
No, but they could.
I'm not. I guess we're not in charge of that.
No, we're not.
Do you want to make a petition?
No,
to
I
buy
don't.
the, Did you want to buy the
No,
lot?
I don't want to buy the lot.
It's only 800,000, they said.
So, all that being said, I think that it should be. I'm going to make a motion.
Okay, thank you.
I move that the variance request for case VRB in 1986, property located at 5117 West Neptune Way, be granted as depicted on the site plan presented at the public hearing for removal of a grand tree based upon the petitioner meeting the burden of proof that the tree should be would be rendered hazardous by the proposed construction and cannot be reasonably reconfigured. That cannot be reasonably reconfigured when considering the factors set forth in section 27-284.2.5F of the city code for grand tree removal, specifically that the evidence provided in the record and at this public hearing showed that the tree has a very pronounced canopy, that some of the limbs were very low, that the limbs run the width of the lot, and that the canopy takes over the vast majority of this lot, and that even a one-story structure would have difficulty being built here. And given the context of this neighborhood, the tree cannot remain.
All right, we have a motion for removal from Mr. Feldman, a second by Ms. Long. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Been approved 4-0. Anything else, staff? Are we free? Meeting done. Yeah, it's not even.